Hey there, workforce.
Brian here.
Chris here.
Lots of stuff has been going on this week.
But let's talk about you.
Alright, so over the course of the last couple weeks, we posted a lot of videos, and you guys have been phenomenal. Your questions have challenged us in how we think of things, but I think they've added to the overall community. So it's time for another Q&A. We've got both of us here together, and we're going to talk about three main videos. The first one, Chris's video about achievements. The second one, the 8-man dungeons, and why, at least I think they should be brought back. We'll see what everybody says as well. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with Chris's latest video on jump potions. You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do this thing.
So the first video was my video about achievements. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, basically I questioned what we're looking forward to in Stormblood as far as achievements go. If there was a change to the achievement system, even though they've only said they're interested in one and that we shouldn't expect one at release, what would that look like? What are some ways that it could add some depth to the game? What are some ways that they could add that kind of replayability and help feel more rewarded than just getting some points that honestly I can't even see Brian's points easily without a third-party app.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's anybody too against this idea, but we did have some interesting comments.
All right, so Metsunoshin writes, and he asks you this. He goes, "Who are you?"
I'm Chris with Work to Game.
Where's Brian?
He's right here.
Yeah. And please close your bathroom door.
Well, that's going to be a little hard. Currently, I am filming in a temporary space in my house. I'm in Brian's house right now, and there is no door on that bathroom. If it helps, we don't use it. It's just an extra bathroom.
Yeah, Metsunoshin's actually my alternate ego.
Then you already knew that.
No, I didn't.
But yes, I took some time off for vacation. Brian, obviously with his work schedule, has had a little bit of time to bring up the more game half of Work to Game lately, and I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so Lif _ I guess we'll just stick with Lif.
Do you think it's live?
Or it could be live. Let us know in the comments below how we should pronounce it.
We'll do a straw poll. We don't actually care about his opinion. We like everybody else's.
All right, so, but he writes, he's like, "I really like the achievement system in Terra with the Borders lures that it awarded. It was the only time that I actively did achievements to reach the championship laurel. Missed 2 big achievements for it before I quit good though. Also, the achievement tab, A-net points, and Guild Wars 2 are pretty neat and motivating." So, what are your thoughts? Did you play Terra or Guild Wars 2 at all?
I did play Guild Wars 2. Mm-hmm. I did not play Terra, but the idea that it helps raise you to another level reminds me a lot of like Paragon levels in Diablo.
Oh, I love Paragon levels.
Or, just some of the things where you see these games basically say, we're not going to break the game because you play,
right?
But we are going to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It would be really nice to see Final Fantasy do this same thing. Obviously, in a dream world, it would be you would thank me for all the Final Fantasy titles I played. Like, give me a mount for playing Final Fantasy X a million times in a row.
Yeah,
a little late for that.
Well, you'd need to go back in time and be like, hey, there's this thing that's going to happen.
This?
Can you track this with no internet? What's the internet?
I would play it again to earn a mount.
Well, you could technically try to do that through Steam or something nowadays, but that requires a big coordinated effort because you have to play on a specific platform, that game, and have it somehow linked to the difficulty to development cost ratio. I think they'd be like, if someone's going to drop $500 million on me, absolutely, I'm going to do that.
I think what really got me about this comment was that he sounded like I wouldn't have normally done achievements. And because the achievements were leading me on to the next level, because I was getting promoted, I wanted to do more.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want this in my quest notification log. Like, okay, you've got, what are the 3 quests I'm going to try to do this week? 2 of them are achievements. They're not actually required quests for the game, but I do want to go out and kind of finish those things up so that I can finish up some metas and get some loot or get a promotion or whatever that system looks like.
Sakara Helmel writes, "Agree on everything here. Achievements can be a great way to add extra replay value without increasing too much of the development cost to the games. It probably is one of the cheapest way to do so too. The only downside is that it can feel repetitive and useless if you get nothing out of it and that all you do the same thing over and over and over. This is something that can be easily fixed with many examples that you provided. I would probably make the same changes that you provided if I could. It would also be a great way to introduce more emotes to the game as well. So what are your thoughts?
First of all, emotes, incredibly clever.
Yeah.
It's something they could have just given us for free, but because they say if you go do this quest line, you can make your character dance ridiculous, I do it twice, then I never do it again.
Done.
I still do all of those quests.
Right.
So anything that adds more emotes to the game, I'm all about that. I would love emotes that are more prop oriented, like I'm pulling things, I pull maracas out of my jacket, and just more emotes is what the game needs. Also more
emotes, more
content,
emotes,
but
more
just
emotes. Stop emotes. Stop emotes.
I need an entire expansion of just emotes. Doesn't even have a title, it just has emoticons. I think he basically summed up just, it's incredibly cheap, it's an easy way for them to add it. The one concern is valid, that repetition. Even if you find a really cool way to do an achievement, like the pantsless achievement, right? Obviously, it's going to naturally lower your eye level to take off pants. Mm-hmm. So it sounds really goofy, but it's actually incredibly challenging at a mechanics level,
right,
because you're denying yourself one of your largest stat things. But once you beat all the dungeons without pants on, beating all the dungeons without a shirt on really doesn't add any additional depth for the same idea.
Right.
You've got to come up with something new. So I hope that whatever they come up with, they don't just say, hey, we came up with 3 new ideas and then we did them 1,000 times each.
Right.
It'd be nice to see them kind of
different ideas. You and I were having a conversation because I said that Yoshi P said that he really likes this idea. So this question was brought up as a part of the media interview, and Yoshi was like, yeah, that's great. Minimum eye level, and all like things like pantsless. Yep. And you brought up an idea as another way is that you then start to relate these random achievements together. So it's like, okay, well, you did the raid pantsless, and then you auto ran 200 times, and then you said /dance 30 times in the rain, and you got the I like to dance in the rain pantless achievement.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's like that it's
streaker.
But that they're interconnected, and that it's like the game needs to, and I would add, not only is this a great idea to extend the life of it, but it also needs to let people know when they're getting close to something. Hey, did you know that if you did this, you would unlock this achievement? I did not know that, and I will do that now because I'm going to get a mount, or I'm going to get a new emote, or all these examples that everybody's provided.
I'm 5 dungeons away from my X number of dungeons achievement, and that will actually put me 1 achievement away from the, giant bunny rabbit mount. Great. We got to run some more dungeons tonight.
Absolutely.
Because I am getting that bunny.
Absolutely. Got to hop. So for our second video, we're talking about the 8-man dungeons. I posted this video up talking about how the game needs more 8-man dungeons. And one of the best things that came out of it recently, obviously not because of my video, but the diadem was redone, and it works out real well, especially for parties of 8 with the 1 tank, 2 healers, 5 DPS, which was basically my model. And that's kind of what I talked about, how that I'm tired of 4-man dungeons. I think 8-man dungeons with 1 tank would help alleviate DPS waiting times, would also help just change up the content, being able to add in new mechanics. So that's pretty much what that video was about, and this is what you guys had to say about it.
So first up, David Timothy says, on the topic of 8-man dungeons though, I'd love to see them return, and it would be a great chance for them to introduce a more flexible duty finder format, which would help queue times, like you just said.
Absolutely.
Say a mandatory 1 tank, 1 healer, 4 DPS, and 2 wildcard slots that would be just filled with whatever is heavy in the queues at the moment.
And I think this idea is absolutely brilliant. The idea of a wild card. Now, some people said oh man, that's 1 healer might be taxing, but it really just depends on the content in and of itself. Right now, you could be fully geared and 1 healer is just focused on DPS as opposed to healing at all, because the other healer's like, I got it. If Jelly's with us, she's like, I can do both solo heal and DPS. But for the topic in and of itself, the wild card item is great. Imagine if there was just a bunch of tanks in queue for some reason in this alternate reality.
Slowest DPS run ever.
Well, tanks have a DPS stance. Hopefully they fix Paladin in 4.0 with Sword Oath. Makes Sword Oath useful. Side note, hashtag make Sword Oath useful. But I love the idea behind the wild card, because if somebody's filling up, if there's one particular role, it's going to be DPS most, 99% of the time. But one night, every healer in the world decides to log in, and let's just throw in a healer into that wild card slot. So I thought this idea was great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, David. Fantastic idea. Thanks for sharing.
Tinka says, I think we should have a 5-man dungeon. With Stormblood, all the types are balanced. We now have 3 tanks, Paladin, Warrior, Dark Knight. 3 healers, White Mage, Scholar, Astrologian. 3 DPS Caster, Black Mage, Summoner, Red Mage. 3 DPS Melee, Monk, Dragoon, Samurai. 3 supports, Bard, Machinist, Ninja.
Mm-hmm. So I've actually put a lot of thought into the idea behind 5-mans within Final Fantasy, and the conclusion I came up with is that while 4 is traditional to the Final Fantasy brand, I felt like it was a misstep to have it at 4 and 8. It should have really, if they wanted it to be something else, 5 or 10, or just had it at the base level as 6. Because one of the issues that you have with 4 is that you have 1 tank, 1 healer, 2 DPS, but ratios show us more people are playing DPS, and if you had one more DPS slot, if it was just 1-1-3, that would help alleviate those queues automatically, and a lot of the waiting time would be dramatically reduced. That's just a matter of mathematics right there. So I love this idea. The challenge that I see, not to say they never would do it, but the challenge I see with them doing it is that requires a lot of balancing to the existing content in the game. And that obviously would require an expansion, and that would require an investment. That would require them going on and doing it. And that's the whole reason why I went with 8-man, is because we have that structure already set up, and it would be more for introducing it going forward as opposed to retroactively going and changing those 4-mans. I mean, in all honesty, I would rather see them introduce just nothing but 8-mans with an occasional 4-man that should be really hard. That 4-man, dungeon run should be an example of, here are 4 people and we're going to try to throw them against some really hard content. But again, that's just my opinion. I would love to see kind of a revisit to that concept of 5-man, because that naturally fits that ratio. 8-man really doesn't, because then we're still talking about 2 healers, and even if you dropped it down to the wild card idea, you're still talking about it doesn't fit with the natural ratio of those roles. So, great idea. Thank you very much.
Matthew Harrington, as long as we're not main story driven, hell yeah, I would totally love this. Even if not, then maybe even 5-mans. Mm-hmm. Something else would be a nice change of pace. For 8-man, I would love to see 1 tank, 2 heals, 5 DPS. 1 heal for that many people. Failing mechanics would be an MP dump, not to mention being unable to use DPS as much as I know healers shouldn't have to worry about it. That's just kind of how it goes now.
So he brightens up a couple really great points. So the pretty much the ratio 1-2-5, which I think was working real well in the Diadem. I'd love to know, Matthew, your thoughts on the Diadem, with that structure, if it's working out for you on that regard. But the other piece of it is that, going with 1 less heal, that does put a strain on the healer. Now, the healer wouldn't necessarily be able to DPS, but even like we discussed it, that them not having to heal continually removes even the debate over should healers DPS at all.
Yep.
Because they're going to be healing. Like, you don't have time. Like, you've got to manage.
If you don't have time, there is no debate.
Especially if there's a lot of raid, wide group wide damage going out, where it's like, not talking about the unavoidable stuff, because that just frustrates you.
Yeah.
It's like, I won't heal if you can move.
The concern with 1 healer being that you lose a res if they go down.
Exactly, and so then you would hope that a summoner's in your group.
You'd have to.
That's the problem with 4-mans.
You'd have to put battle reses on your tank. You'd have to put somebody.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the problem with the 4-mans right now, is that unless you're running with the summoner and the healer goes down, you're screwed. Paladins should have a battle res because of their nature with white magic, and then you should just allow for the Phoenix Downs to work, like in that content, in the battle sense, as opposed to the way, and allow them to stack. That solves
worth
that.
Something,
right? That would be worth trading. They'd be worth, like, I'm going to keep a stack on me at all times because they do something. And you can even put a 15-minute cooldown on them. You used it. You got 15 minutes till you can use the next one.
Sure. Battle cooldown.
It's gonna, like, great. It still is valuable in that regards. So in that same vein, it makes sense with 5, but with an 8-man, you get into the tricky sense with the secondary healer, perspective, that particular role. So, but we kind of covered a lot of it with the other comment talking about 5-mans, how that actually makes a much better ratio when you talk about people who want to tank, people who you want to heal, and people who want to DPS. And that's trying to solve that problem with math.
Nama comes in and says, I'd like to see 8-man's return as a dungeon mode. New and previous dungeons could be 4 or 8-man, with an 8-man version serving as the hard mode for mid-core content and stepping stone into harder stuff.
Yeah, he brings up, I love that idea, where it's that, now from a development cost perspective, that's going to add more time on the design of the dungeon, because are you having one guy designing it and then the same guy also designing the 8-man, because that's a burden, from a developer's point of view. But from the gaming point of view, that stepping stone makes a lot of logical sense. You've cleared it. Now, can you do an 8-man where, boom, we're going to throw a lot more stuff on you. You look like you have
Now, WoW used to do that. They used to have the 40-man set the bar, then they added 25-mans, they had 10-mans, you had 5-mans, and basically 40-man was your bar. The problem is it got harder and harder to put more people together. So if you want your most hardcore thing to also be the hardest to get the group together, because it's hardcore, it can't be your roulette. It can't be you're looking for LFRs, you're looking for raid, you're just general pickup groups. So if anything, I think this is a great idea. I would actually flip-flop it, and I would say 8-mans are incredibly forgiving because, say there are 5 DPS. Each DPS is responsible to pull in 20% of the weight. Not that any of us are using meters. And so if I suddenly am only putting out 18% of really what I'm supposed to be doing, the total group still has that other 80% possible. So I can only do so much damage by losing my own efficiency. And so if I'm a subpar player, or I'm just busy eating a Hot Pocket because it's my daily roulette, then I'm not punishing everybody else. And then you make that 4-man content. Listen, get in voice chat, pay attention. This is going to be hard. There is no room for error. Every single action on every single one of you matters.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that you bring up a really good point. So with the flipping of that, I think where he's coming from is there needs to be some kind of middle, more.
Oh yes.
There seems to be maybe a content gap.
If I don't want to do Savage, then I'm stuck on casual play, and that's a great point.
What else? Yeah, what else is there to do? The diadem, I think, is a good option. PvP, which we're running tonight, I think is going to be a good fun option for us. So thank you anyway. Thank you so much, Nama, for that comment.
And one more. Gavin58582. There are a lot of you Gavins. Dungeons are repetitive because you have an automated group finding tool, which then leads into the stone system for gear. Welcome to MMORPGs, which are just a lobby-based games today. If you didn't have a duty finder and just used party finder to form groups, you wouldn't be doing dungeons daily for stones. I imagine that's autocorrect for tomes.
Yeah. You call tomes.
See, and I haven't been around long enough to know these things.
That doesn't matter.
I'm catching up.
I call them tomes. Tome, pome, bone. All kinds of things that rhyme.
Anything that rhymes.
Yeah.
You can then set up an RNG system with filters for loot that helps people get the gear that they want without running a dungeon so many times and never getting a drop.
Right. So he brings up the idea, though, that you're running the dungeon and you're not getting the drop you want. So that typical artificial rarity, and the filter in and of itself, it would be analyzing the group to say, oh, nobody can use this, let's not drop it. Let's drop something maybe useful that then they can roll on. So it's, you're getting the things that you want. And the whole point behind it is that when you run the same thing, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's 8-man, 24-man, or whatever, on your 100th run, it has less impact or less interest than on your first 10, 20, or even 30 times. It's just the nature of doing something. If you go run a marathon every day, of your life, at some point your body's just going to wear out naturally. And it's just, even during the day, during that 1 mile, you're going to be like, I hate mile 13. It's just natural by any kind of repetitive nature. And he's right. The reason is because the reason why it's set up is because it's set up for quick matching. The problem is that you can't go and cut those systems out and be competitive in the MMORPG space. So I agree with him from a party finder perspective. Typically, we run with premates, when we're all online. Hey, what do we all want to go do?
Unless they make 8-man standard.
Well, then we've got a problem because
we only have 7 people.
We only ever had never the same 7. It's our magic number.
It's our magic number.
What? Screw 8-man dungeons. 7-man everything, because that fits us perfectly.
If you could just have each server centered around a very small, specific group of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Gavin. That's a good point. And now for our last video, and it's kind of actually the most controversial topic. Should we have jump potions?
Hell no!
I'm going to have to go against you there, sir. I think jump potions are incredibly necessary. And this video really goes into why. This video goes into what does a jump potion need to look like? Why is it necessary? Because honestly, if they went back and just fixed the content in the first place, we wouldn't feel the need to skip it. But as games get longer and longer and longer, you have an expansion that was designed to last 2 years, and now you have 5 of those.
Yeah.
You have 10 years of content, and you're saying, yeah, I expect a new player to go through all of that.
What if, just to troll us, Yoshi P actually put in jump potions that when consumed literally made you jump up and down? Boop. Here's your jump potion, suckers.
People said listen to the players more.
Yeah, I know, right? All right, so Gaming Drifter writes, I gotta say, I'm having a difficult time to even get into Heavensward. I've been on and off Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn for a while now. I've got the game on PS3 when it released back then and transferred it to PS4. I got to level 50 with my Paladin, and then I stopped playing, and all the updates came out with the expansion. I tried to get back in once Heavensward was on sale, and I bought it to continue playing, but oh wait, I have to sit through hours and hours upon story and fetch quests. If you actually skip the dialogue in these quests, most of them are so uninteresting that they seem pointless. And so then he goes on to say that he talks about like just the difficulty in getting into it and just that barrier. And so outside of just jumping your level, but jumping through that story, you want to jump into Heavensward. You want to take part where everybody else is going. It brings to mind just that very thing. So I feel that from his comment that he's in agreement with you. He's someone who's played the game. He knows how to play, and he just wants to skip over what he feels is a boring story. Now, one of the things in your video that you brought up that I actually I disagree with is the dig on story. I like the story in the game, but that's just me. That's my personal opinion. I appreciate the story of Final Fantasy, and I would argue it is a big part of the game. So along with Gaming Drifter, what do you have to say?
I appreciate the amount of effort they put in. I think that Final Fantasy beyond anybody has the best ability to take a game and produce a movie out of it, because they basically already did it in the game a couple of times over.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what happens is I'm like him. I get behind. I didn't start this back in 1.0, and so I'm well behind Brian and Jelly and the rest of the group. And sometimes my job gets a little hectic, and I am married, and we're renovating the house, and I have these other priorities. And when a patch comes out, if you just play this game and this is all you do, it takes like a day or two to do the quest. It's not a big deal. It's really not at all.
Yeah.
The problem is when you end up 6, 8, 10 patches behind, that's now 10 days. And then you're saying, once I get to the end of that, I still have to do the repetitive leveling that we were talking about earlier through the dungeons.
Right, for gear especially, up, yeah.
Because I'm still not running content. I'm still not good for the roulette. And so Jelly's like, yeah, but I need my tomes for my roulette. And so she either has to wait on me or has to run without me. And that kind of separates groups. So I understand this. And I really appreciate across the board, even the people who disagreed with me, I appreciate the positivity that's largely present in the comments section. I think there are two very different sides to this argument. And I think that Gaming Drifter and I are on the same page. I don't always have the time to put into the MMO that I might have had to put into the MMOs when I was playing, when I was a teenager or at college, and I could stay up till 4 a.m. if a patch dropped.
Yeah. Or unemployed.
That helps.
So outside of just jump potions, because jump potions are almost kind of like a band-aid to a symptom, because essentially your argument was the content should be inviting and fun, and that way we as veteran players would go and participate it with our friends. So instead of like, hey, go do 2 60-hour RPGs solo, then you can hang out with the cool kids, but rather than like, oh, you're in, I want to do that again, I want to take part in that fight. And so the GNPT writes, I'd like to see achievements and cutscenes tied to story opt-ins. Quests that are no longer required to unlock dungeons, and players can just do dungeons and leaves in Palace of the Dead, and class quests up to level cap. And then they can actually go back and do their main story quests when they want to experience the story, and maybe have all the main story quests, especially the fights, scale. And so her theme, her point in this, and I'm assuming it's a her. It could be. It looks like a.
It's a very pretty pony.
Yeah, it could be a brony. So it's like, Anyway, so he or she, they write their theme. What they're talking about is that, and just kind of like what you were almost getting at, is that instead of having jump potions be kind of a band-aid of the solution, make the content interesting, and then also. If you want to do story, you could do it, but it's going to scale. So if you want to do it later, you can. What's your response?
That's the big deal with this being Stormblood coming up, because even if we all agree, okay, up to this point we have to be able to skip it because it was faulty, how can we moving forward avoid getting sick again? I don't want to just need a jump potion every 2 expansions because it didn't hold my attention. I want to go back and say, man, Iron Cutter's crying forever.
Right.
I would love to do that with you. And that needs to reward the high-level player in a way that it's worth their time, either through an engaging achievement system, or through tomes, or through gil, or through credit towards something unique. And it also just needs to be engaging content. It just needs to be fun. And if I'm not into story, the quests themselves are talk to so-and-so, run back to the place we keep running back to, talk to so-and-so. And so if you're pushing escape, you're literally teleporting, watching a load screen, holding the auto run, pressing the escape button, rinse and repeat 100 times in a row. So I think you really hit on something perfect here, that if they could go back and say, okay, these 3 quests are mandatory, all the others are side quests now, there's going to be a reward for that, but you don't have to do them, everything's unlocked to you, go nuts. And then they could go back and come up with some sort of system where it's fun to go back, and maybe it sinks you into the zone all the time, and maybe if you sync, you both get these crazy rewards. So it's like kind of like Fates, where it's fun for me to go back and run Fates with you,
right?
Even if I'm the higher level. And it'd be neat to see them find a way to do that. My fear is that from a development cost, they're now putting money into content that doesn't necessarily have the same base, as Stormblood's going to be played by everybody.
Right.
There's a lot of people who wouldn't go back. And so I think that's why jump potions are probably what will happen, but I like the idea of this better.
Yeah. I like this idea, and for me, like, I like the story, and yeah, it's like the story kind of tells the progression of the world, and so there would definitely have to be some big changes that would have to happen with it. But all in all,
that's Brian.
Right? What's going on? Well, okay. So this guy, he got pissed at this guy, and then this was happened 600 years ago.
Makes sense.
But the idea though is that by making, like you said, making the rewards like. The thing I bring up a lot is kind of Final Fantasy XI's conquest system, is that as you were doing stuff in the zone, you were helping some cause. Like as the server was coming together, we were all doing something. So to go and run low-level fates, especially on level 60, there's no benefit for me. To go and, it would be great. I would like to see them allow us to go in and help with fights that are soloable right now, and that to reward level 60 players doing fates with something, because we get XP, gil, and seals. Well, the gil and seals is low enough that it's really negligible, but the XP goes to nowhere. Either allow me to pull that XP into, and now I'm leveling another job that I'm just going to use this XP, use it here, or give me tomes and some other things, so that I'm actually benefiting myself and you, and we're doing this stuff and having fun together, and that it's not just about fetch quests. It's not about that. But that's, there's a lot of work there. So I'm speaking of this as, just do this simple thing, and it's that, okay, no, it's like go and spend millions and millions of dollars to make this type of system where you don't necessarily know that, like the cheaper option, the business option,
just skip it.
Is just
Stormblood was designed to last those of us that are already going into it at level cap. It's 2 years. So just put the new players on the same playing field, and let's just start fresh.
And hopefully they can start with some of that. Yoshi P has talked about new options for the quests and the tools that he wants to introduce with Stormblood and beyond. So that it could be a good start, a new jumping off point with that kind of content going forward. Get everybody there, but then also make it engaging.
Or at least push all the characters to the same level that Raid Mage is going to start out at. You have a class that's already going to start out at a higher level. You obviously think that's okay. What's the problem with all the classes just jumping to that point?
Yeah, everybody's going to have to learn Red Mage, right? And lastly, last comment, friend of the channel, we got Jellybean Sugarbender. Hey, Jelly. She writes, I don't feel like teaching level 60 new player how to tank, heal, or DPS because they have $20, for example, because it's really not fun not to finish the dungeon because people don't know what they're doing. I'm all for story jumping potions because some people just don't like doing the story. But it's not that hard to level in this game. I know that they put in jumping potions at some point. I just hope that it's a time where there's just not a lot of things going on. And in all honesty, if you only want to play this game a few times a month, then maybe this game really isn't for you. I don't think Square Enix is going to cater to people who might pay for a sub for 3 months out of the year and then not come back. So Jelly brings up a couple of really good points, especially like from, I don't know too many people who are especially against a story jump potion, because when you think about leveling, it's like, they could even
or just the ability to come back and do it later.
Right. Well, yeah, you could still, if you could go back and do it later, that's even cooler. But the idea of like, if you even accelerate the leveling of it, so all of a sudden it's like, well, you're level 60 in a week, you've got, there's an option that way that doesn't have to require that. But even if they did that, someone's probably not going to learn their job or their class because of that. In fact, I think you brought this up about the leveling doesn't teach people how to play currently.
If you are on a server where people are already incredible because there is no jumping potion currently in the game, please tell me what server you're on. I have found people who seem to be just fine at not knowing a single skill on their bar that are level capped. And there is no jumping potion, so I know they leveled. If the jumping potion is only getting them the level that we're already starting red mages, what's the problem? We're obviously expecting red mages to figure this stuff out. If we're going to have major sweeping changes to the rotation, like black mage sub 50 to black mage post 50, so dealing with Enochian, it totally changes my rotation. So say I had somehow perfected all this stuff, which I hadn't. Me facing one boar and then turning around and facing another boar, and then turning around and facing another boar, doesn't encourage me. It doesn't encourage me to dodge mechanics. It doesn't encourage me to practice. And if anything, I get good at sleep. I don't use sleep nearly as much. In 4-mans, there really isn't as much CC in the current content.
Right. Well, and then you could end up, because it's like you go with the AoE rotation.
Right.
Because that's going to give the best DPS, and it's not going to danger the party. Like in other content, like it's like, well, instead of,
but I can't AoE pull by myself.
Right.
So there is no practice. So I would say people are learning either way. So if this is the argument, then the leveling needs to be done in dungeons instead of out in the world, because we have people learn out in the world so that they can go into the dungeons. They need to be learning in the dungeons from the very get-go.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to have to teach them, because our daily roulettes are going to put us in there. And there was even a comment in here that said, like, I had to run with somebody for the very first time and I had to give them all this advice and then it went fine. I wish it was that easy, that we always just give advice one time and it works out fine. I think that what they were hitting on is absolutely accurate. More likely, it's what Jelly's pointing at here, and they were being generous, and I'm trying to give advice and they're ignoring me, and we're eventually failing the dungeon.
Right. And we everybody's encountered that. It's that
especially with trials.
Right. If you would do this, you'd be successful, and then the response is, you don't pay my sub. Or like, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to play the way that I want to play. And it's like, I get the way that you want to play the way you want to play, but wouldn't the way you want to play would be good? Yeah. It's like,
and hopefully a class-specific UI will help with this.
I'm really excited. I can't wait. We should be seeing that.
Every rotation is drastically different.
Right.
I've never really leveled my Dragoon up, and when Adam and you get to talking about Dragoon, and Yoshi P went over that, and so it's obviously a concern of theirs. So obviously, however they do a jumping potion or something to get these people caught up when it comes time for that, maybe it's Stormblood, maybe it's later, I think that they are going to be very cautious there. And that brings me to her last section there, where she says, in all honesty, if you only play this game a few times a month, that is... sorry, Jelly. That's a little to the one side for me. Vanilla WoW set up an RPG as a leveling simulator. It was a game for leveling. It was like 17 days of playtime between 0 and 60. You have people who played Vanilla WoW the whole time, never hit cap, or if they did, they never got their epic mount, and if they did, they definitely didn't make it into some of those early raids, and they're like, oh gosh, I don't even know what you're talking about with, Burning Brightwood Staff and all this. And I mean, there's just this whole subculture on my server. We called them homeschooled or retired, and because those were the only people who had the time to keep up with the schedule. And the game has shifted. The whole genre has shifted. Eve's done it, WoW's done it, and Final Fantasy's doing it, where it's a lot more casual. And so now it's taking 17 hours to level. And so I'll agree that it is quick to level, but this whole, well, you should just be willing to put in the work. I don't have to do that on other games. When I pick up Titanfall, all I am is bad. I'm not in a different lobby because they're 17 days ahead of me.
Right.
And that's the difference. Is this game says, you guys don't get tomes if you're doing stuff with me, so I have to level all by myself. And a few times a month, I mean, that could be 12 hours a week, and you'd still be left. I mean, how long? If I played 10 hours a week, how long would I be left behind if I started brand new today? 6 weeks?
Yeah.
So I would say that's a pretty decent play schedule, especially for somebody that has other priorities outside of gaming, depending on where you're at in life.
Mm-hmm.
I think this game is for those people, and I think that right now we're risking leaving them behind.
Yeah, and we don't want to. We don't want to leave them behind because they're going to come in and they might leave and they might come back. I think from a balance and a user, a community perspective is that you want all types.
Yes.
You want all types of players. Now, the difference, and I've talked about this a couple times, is it becomes between roulette and party finder. Roulette is a gamble. It's always going to be a gamble, and that's where I think a lot of
in the name.
I think a lot of animosity in the community comes out of the expectations. Roulettes put people who might have different expectations together, and that's where, like even in marriage, like anybody out there who's married, it's the unspoken expectations that will get you. It's not the ones you know. If you know that you're supposed to take out the trash and you don't, well, you knew that you're supposed to take out the trash. If you had no idea that you needed to go on the roof and repair it, and then all of a sudden, like, they're mad. You're and it's like, why aren't you on the roof repairing it? Like, oh, was I supposed to do that today? Like,
yeah, my dad always did that every March, and I never told you that.
It's like, oh, well, let me work. Let me call your dad.
Great.
But so it's those unspoken expectations that they get you. So people could go into roulette expecting that, hey, we're going to clear this in 15 minutes. But then somebody's coming in and is like, hey, I'm first time, I'm nervous. And so then that's where it's like you have that kind of problem. So I think that's where Party Finder is going to be. And with the Cross-World Party Finder, I think they've brought in solutions to help negate that. And I would encourage more people to use it. Now, I've heard people say, like, I can't find stuff in Party Finder. And it's like, well, maybe create it yourself and see if you can get people, like-minded working that way.
There's a group of players who have been subscribed since 1.0. They are a base that you cannot leave behind, and you need to show them respect, and you need to not make them feel like you've cheapened their experience.
Right.
But obviously we're not taking loot from people because it's still dropping the same amount of loot per run. There's actually just going to be shorter queue times now. But you can't say, hey, remember that mount that you spent 2 years earning through us? We're just going to give that with the new collector's edition.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You can't do that. You have to show some respect for the people who put in the time, but you have to also say, yeah, I mean, as people stop playing for various reasons, we've got to be able to grow the player base too.
Thanks, Jelly, for the comment. Thanks for always being there and making us laugh and helping us out and healing us. She's a fantastic
and
hero.
out DPSing us
Yeah,
while
that's
at
true.
it.
Yeah, pretty much being just generally awesome. All right, so that wraps us up for our 3 videos and for y'all's comments. Thank you so much. We can't do this without you, and we're so thankful for you guys weighing in. So let us know in the comments below what you think about any of these videos. You can also find the links for each of these videos in the description, so you can check those out, and you can check out the comments and what people are saying there directly as well.
I think that's it. Let us know if maybe there's some expansions to these topics you'd like to see. Obviously, some of them have a little more depth than others, and we will learn more as Stormblood gets closer.
Absolutely. So for Work to Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
And we hope you have a fantastic week, and we hope to see you in our next video. But until then, take care. Hey, it's me. Thanks so much for watching this video. You should click here to subscribe, and here to maybe check out some more of our videos. So again, thanks for watching. We hope you like this video. We hope you subscribe and join our community. Let us know in the comments below what you think, and we'll see you next time.